Hey, it's Clay. How's everybody doing today? And I wanted to do a review of this Line 6 Pod HD500. I've had it for quite a while now. It's definitely not new anymore, but it's Line 6's current offering in the all-inclusive modeler department, and I think I've owned it for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. I want to say it was the Christmas right after it came out. I got it in that middle of that winter, so it's been about a year and a half. And so I spent a lot of time with it, and I think I'm in a position where I can kind of give a pretty good overall review of what I think, how it works. You know, does it live up to a lot of the hype that was surrounding it when it first came out? And you know, looking at it now, is it a good option? I mean, because obviously, as it's been out for a while, the price is going to be dropping used, and if people are still looking to buy it, I just wanted to help you out a little bit. So, first things first, I want to just talk about just really basic things like the reliability. I have never once had a problem with any sort of reliability. It has fired up for me every single time I put the power cord in. It has never failed once. I don't baby it, but at the same time, I've never been rough with it. I have brought it with me to play at gigs or at church or wherever I'm at. I've moved twice now since I owned it, and so and it has been rock solid. These foot switches are really good. The expression pedal is really good. Overall, it's really been really good in terms of reliability. And I know that with something that's a little bit lower price point, people are usually concerned with how reliable it's going to be, and overall I could definitely give this a really big thumbs up as far as that goes. I've been really impressed. And next thing I really want to talk about is functionality. This is not something that I initially considered when I first got this unit, because I was really just wanting it for the new HD modeling on the amps, but in terms of functionality, this thing has blown me away. I don't even know if I can really think off the top of my head all the different ways that I've used it. I've used it to record, you know, just plug a guitar in, use the USB out to a computer, and recording that way. I've probably got over 100 videos on my YouTube channel featuring that in some way, shape, or form. So as a standalone unit, it is extremely good. I've used that to play out with. I've just plugged in and then used the XLR out and gone straight into the front of house. I've done that to great success. I actually played that for a while at a church thing where I had really limited stage volume, and so this was great because I didn't have to worry about any stage volume. I viewed it as a late night practice tool, plugging in headphones. It's been phenomenal. I've used it just as effects, which is currently how I'm mostly using it when I play live. I bring this along and I use it as delays, reverbs, modulation, wah, maybe like a funk filter type of a sound. And maybe use a compressor for a line level boost. And it works really, really well in that regard too. Even just thinking about it, if you just look at it and think of it as like a big DL4 with a lot more options, I mean, it works really, really well in that regards. And I mean, Line 6 DL4 is one of the most popular delay units ever. And this actually solves a lot of the problems. It has adjustable master volume. And the buffer actually is really good in it. It's not true bypass, so when you pull out the power plug, it cuts your signal, but I've A/B'd it where I just plug straight in and then plug through this, and it sounds almost identical. So it's really, really good in that regard. You've used the 4-cable method, which actually is something I have used a little bit, but I have not gotten into as in-depth as it possibly could. Because I have a good selection of amps between the Frenzel and the Princeton and the Marshall Class 5. I've got a good set of amps to use, and I'm not really one to want to really change a lot of different amps to get my sounds. I would rather use pedals. But if that's what you want to do, this can do it, and it can do it really, really well in terms of configurability. It's amazing. You can also, I've used this just as a standalone recording unit, so like you can plug into it and use it as a recording interface and preamp. It has, in the new 2.0 update, it actually has a studio pre, so you can get it to sound like some of those old studio pre. I've plugged my acoustic guitar into here. A bass would work really well as well for recording. It has a bass amp model now as well with that 2.0 update. So you could use it, just to plug mics in and plug that into your computer, because the interface and the preamp is really high quality as well. And with all these things, it's incredibly easy to use. The interface is really easy to use, and it is just so highly configurable. And even just with like the buttons and the foot switches and the expression pedal. When I was using it as a standalone unit playing, at church, I would have the top 4 buttons laid out as my presets, maybe a clean, dirty, lead, and then the 4th one might be like a swell or something kind of more ambient. And then the bottom 4 would be my effects. So I'd have, compressor as a boost, overdrive, and then maybe 2 delays, dotted eighth and a quarter note or something like that. So in that regard, you have so much flexibility in terms of how you want to set it up, how you want to use it. And actually, you could even use this just as like a MIDI switcher for another digital unit like XFX or 11 rack. You could just use this as a standalone just for the switches themselves, which is really sweet. Also, the looper is something that I've got a ton of use out of. I have like 30 or 40 some looper videos on my YouTube channel, and I've used this looper almost exclusively. And the looper is really good. It's really customizable. You can, and one of the really nice things about it that I really like when I'm trying to come up with patches is I'll put the looper post all the effects, so that when I'm tweaking the overdrive, you can hear it in real time. So you actually can play like a basic guitar riff, change the gain and the mids on the amp, and then you hear how that sounds immediately. It's a really nice way to really quickly come up with great sounding patches. The only thing I would say about the looper is I wish it had a little bit more length, just so that you could get like a whole 12-bar blues sequence. There's been a number of times when I want to just loop a whole 12 bars slow blues, but you can't do it because I think you get to about bar 9 or 10, and then it usually cuts out and starts over, but that's pretty minor. So yeah, the looper in it is another functionality. Like, as a looper pedal in itself, this is really, really high functioning. Yeah, you've got undo, pre-post, half speed, reverse, start, stop, and record. It's really easy to use again. And tap tempo too is really sweet. I mean, how many pedals are out? You can actually set it up so that your delay, your tremolo, your modulation effects, any time-based things are all synced to the same tap tempo. So in terms of features, customization, usability, this unit I think is top-notch, and probably one of the best units I've ever used in terms of being able to do a lot of different things really well. Because I think a lot of times with things like that, they kind of do everything just so-so. Whereas I think with this unit, it actually does all those different things really, really well. So now I want to talk about kind of the big core of it, the tones. Because when I bought this, I got it because I wanted the high-quality amp models, and I heard that those were going to be a real step up from the X3. And so just talking first about the amp models themselves, I really, really like the amp models. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the amp models includes both an amp, power amp, EQ, speaker, and an actual mic stuck in front of that speaker. So it's the whole shebang, So if you try to A/B my Princeton versus the Deluxe, I mean, they're not going to sound the same because it's different. It's a whole recorded process. So you have to keep that in mind. It's not going to sound like the amp in the room. But in terms of getting really good recorded tones, I really, really like this unit. Some of the amp models are just extremely good. The Dr. Z in particular, the new Marshall model are real standouts in my mind. And just in general, in terms of that, like, anywhere between the low gain, bluesy crunch, all the way up to, just a cranked up plexi sound, I think this unit nails those tones. I think it does those really, really good. The Bassman, the Fender Deluxe, the Dr. Z, any of the Marshalls, the Plexi, the Park, they're all, the JTM, they're all really, really good amp models, and they do those tones really, really good. And that's always an area where I think amp models have really struggled, is that kind of edge of breakup, very dynamic type of amp response, and I think that this unit does a great job with that. You know, I can control it with my guitar's volume knob, no problem, and it's really great. I'm not extremely pumped about the cleans. I have more success actually just playing through my clean Princeton Reverb clone than, you know, trying to really dial in a really nice warm clean tone. I find the Fender Deluxe and the Fender Twin models to be a little bit plinky, very, very percussive. And not that that's not necessarily true, but there doesn't seem to be something kind of in the middle of those, and like a bass where it's really warm and really fat, or like a plexi that's also going to be pretty warm. It just it's almost overly plinky and overly warm, or shrill almost, to the point where I wish there was, you know, a way to kind of get a more of a middle ground Fender clean tone. The AC30 isn't my favorite amp model. I've played through other Voxes that I think sound better. And honestly, I don't really know enough about high gain to really say either way. I listen to the occasional Metallica record and play some occasional riffs when my right hand is feeling up for it, but I really do think that those models sound good. I just don't really know enough about what good metal tones are like to actually be fair and give it a proper review, so I'm just not going to say anything about that. Now moving on to the effects. The HD500, one of the biggest pluses about this unit that separates it from the other units is the number of effects and the way in which you can customize them. It has the most DSP, it has the most buttons to push on and off your different effects, so you can have the most complex patches. And as a whole, I think the effects are good. Especially the delays and the reverbs. I think those in particular are amazing. The digital delay is so good. The analog delay with modulation, like the old Deluxe Memory Man, is amazing. I use that on almost every single patch. I think it is such a great sounding analog delay. The tape echoes are really good too. And it has really cool, kind of strange, like the lo-fi delay actually sounds really sweet. Yeah, some of those other not so heavily used ones, those are the kind of the delays where you don't really want to like buy a pedal just specifically for that sound, but you just kind of want to mess with it every once in a while. But if you're running a normal board, you're probably just going to get a digital delay and an analog delay, or maybe a multi-unit that can cover some different grounds. But this one really does a lot of different sounds really well. And just in terms of delay, to again have the ability to set, you can do quarter notes, dotted eighth notes, triplets, 16ths, 30 seconds. I mean, there's literally like 10 different subdivisions of tempo that you can do, and that's all based on your tap tempo. I mean, that feature in itself makes it an amazing delay unit. And then all the customization beyond that is just really top-notch. So the delays are really incredible. I really, really love them. If you're looking for an extremely authentic tape delay sound, maybe go elsewhere. Sometimes I find that the tape delay gets overly saturated too quickly, to the point where, if I'm playing with any amount of distortion, or if I'm playing hard at all, it just like way overloads it. Or maybe I just don't know how to set it up very properly, but tape delay kind of has this mythical status, and I prefer the analog delay and the digital delays in this unit. The reverbs are also really, really good. Again, there are like 10 or 12 different reverbs, and they're all useful in their own right. Just a basic room reverb is so functional and so useful on this unit. The 63 spring reverb is really good. I use it all the time. The cave delay, the octaverb in itself, I mean, that is such a cool sound. And again, you don't want to just have to buy one pedal to just cover that sound. Whereas in here, you're not going to use it a ton, but when you do, it sounds really good. And for like ambient type of stuff, I've got a lot of videos on my channel where I'm doing more ambient things with maybe 2 delays, 2 reverbs, and some modulation. And this sounds incredible for kind of those washy delays. So if you're looking for kind of a really cheap and easy analog board, look no further, because this is really good at that. So for delays and reverbs alone, I think this unit is amazing. In terms of modulation effects, I would say it's okay. Tremolo is good, phase is pretty good, chorus is okay. I don't really use a lot of modulation, so I can't really give it a fair review because I don't really care for that kind of stuff. The Univibe is okay. It's not quite as it doesn't nail that Jimmy sound. It gets a little bit kind of, I don't know, it's not quite as hypnotic, if that makes any sense. It's kind of a floofy word, but it's just not my favorite. It can be a little bit meh. So overall, I think the modulations are really good. But that's, again, another place where I don't want to have to buy a $150 chorus pedal. I don't want to have to buy a $120 phaser. You've got it all in here for when you need it if you're not going to use it all the time. Now, moving on to the overdrives and the fuzzes and the distortions, those are actually probably the weakest link in this unit. Just to be completely honest, I don't really care for the overdrives and the distortions. The tube driver is probably my favorite overdrive that I do like, but I don't know what the deal is. Just the way that they EQ and the gain structure and the compression, it just doesn't feel very good to me. A lot of them just get overly compressed, and the EQ is always a little weird, so you almost wonder as if, like, is the wah on? Like, kind of in like a cocked phase. And it just, I don't know, just the way that it interacts with the amps, I don't really care for it. You know, they work. They're very serviceable, but, and especially in that kind of like low gain, pretty much a boost, but also adding some of its own overdrive and coloring it, kind of like what the old tube screamers were used as. I actually prefer to use the compressors in that regard, just because they do a better job of not adding so much gain and EQ on their own. And they just mess more with the dynamics in the output, which is what you want. So the overdrives, I think, are probably going to get my lowest rating. The tube driver's okay, but like pretty much the rest of them I really have never been happy with and never been that satisfied with. Whether I'm using like a clean twin or if I'm running into my Princeton, I don't really care for them. They're like I said, the tube driver works, but I definitely prefer my Catlin Bread, Dirty Little Secret, or my Wampler Ecstasy, or even my MXR Classic Overdrive, really cheap tube screamer. I definitely prefer those analog boxes. The fuzzes are kind of an interesting thing. I really actually like the fuzz face quite a bit. I think it does that really sustaining, very warm, rich, lots of harmonics. I think it does that really, really well, a good fuzz face. And I'm kind of a fuzz face nut. You know, I put a lot of effort into that one, my analog fuzz face. But I think the Big Muff is pretty darn good too. And I don't really know a lot about the other ones. I haven't used them a ton. But they really sound like the clips that you hear on the internet of the real thing. They sound really good. The only knock that I will say is the fuzz face doesn't clean up, and it's maybe not quite as responsive as a real fuzz face. And that's true for the other ones as well. They just don't have quite the extreme realism, which is probably a good thing, because then you don't also don't have to worry about the negatives, you know, the alleviation of temperature and some of those other things. So as a whole, the effects are kind of hit or miss. If you're looking for delays and reverbs, I would say it's amazing. If you're looking for, you know, like standalone overdrives and distortions, and that's your primary use, I would look elsewhere. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. I don't think I've left anything out. Overall, I really, really like this unit. For me, I love it because it is so versatile, and it covers so many different, you know, uses, and I can almost use it at any time that I'm playing guitar in any way. Whether it's I'm recording acoustic, or I'm playing live with a real amp, or if I'm at home recording late at night, it just does all those things really, really well. So in terms of like getting a lot of functionality out of it, I think this unit is amazing. I couldn't say high enough about it. You know, and the tones aren't perfect. They're not, you know, there's nothing beats standing in front of a real amp that's all cranked up, but that's really difficult, and I could probably only do that 10 minutes a day without really annoying my neighbors. So for me, this unit really, really does well. It's not perfect in terms of tones, the overdrives, some of the clean amps, but for everything else, I think that this amp does really great. And you get, like I said, everything else is a lot. That's a lot of ground to cover in just one unit. That's probably under $400 used, or I think they're $400 or $500 new. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions about the HD500, and if you're thinking about it, I think I would go for it. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.